All right, this is pre-algebra, lesson 5.8. Solving equations by multiplying fractions. Okay, here's the deal. Let's look at this. You could have something like this, 6p equals 5/8. Let's go back to this really quick. First of all, let me start over. That's silly. What is 5/6 times 3/4? We've done this before. What do I do here? Just what's the basic rule of multiplying fractions? You just multiply across, right? But that's the basic rule. Is you just 5 times 3 is 15. 6 times 4 is 24, right? You just multiply across. Agreed? You can cross cancel, which will make things easier. If you don't cross cancel here, what ends up happening here? What do I have to do with this? I have to reduce, right? And so if you cross cancel, then you won't have to reduce later. Divide by 3, that's a 1, that's a 2, 5/8. Make sense?
Quite.
Right? Okay. So then, we know how to do that. We know how to multiply fractions, okay? And how do we divide fractions again? How do you divide fractions again? No, I'm sorry, what was that? No, you don't, right? You never multiply fractions, right? You never divide fractions. You only multiply by its reciprocal, right? I want you to remember that. We never divide fractions. We only multiply by its reciprocal. What's the reciprocal again?
When you flip it.
Flip it, right? Flip the second number, okay? Okay, anyway, so if I have this, let's do this then. What is x? What is 2x equals 8? How do I do this again? Line on the equal sign. What do I do? Is the variable happy?
Nice.
No, he's being multiplied by 2. What's the opposite of multiplied by 2? Divide by 2, divide by 2, x equals 4, right? Okay, nothing changes with that, and all of a sudden now we have, let's do a good one here. Let's go 2/3 x equals 5/8. Here's the deal. First thing we do, line on the equal sign. Next thing we do is look and see, is the variable happy? No, why not? What's happening to him? He's being multiplied by 2/3. What's the 2? How do I get rid of multiply by 2/3? On this side, I'm going to write down divide by 2/3 because that's just what I'm used to doing. They're going to go, right? And on this side, am I going to write it like that? Divide by 2? No. I'm going to divide by 2/3. Now, here's the thing. This is what I would tell you. This is the rule, right? This is what I'm going to do. And you go, okay, divide by 2. Those are gone. X equals. And I go, okay, well, how do you divide fractions again? No, you don't, right? You never divide fractions, right? So you're actually going to go 5/8 times 3/2 and do the math, 15/16. Do you agree with that? Okay, I'm going to show you now that technically there's a step here that we don't need to do. Okay, there's a step here that we don't need to do. And that is this. When we get the original question, 2/3 x equals 5/8, line down the equal sign. You go, is the variable happy? No, he's being multiplied by 2/3. And we go, okay, well, what's the opposite of multiply by 2/3? The answer is divide by 2/3. But we're never going to divide by 2/3, right? Are we ever going to divide by 2/3? No. What are we going to do, really? We're going to multiply by 3/2. Let's just do that from the very beginning. Multiply this by 3/2. Multiply this by 3/2. And now they're gone anyway, right? Because what is 3 times 2? 6. What is 2 times 3? 6. 6 over 6 is 1. 1x is just x. Does that make sense? So these are gone anyway. That leaves me with just x. I just saved myself a step. Because we were never going to divide fractions anyway. Because how do you divide fractions again, Gigi? You don't, right? You never divide fractions. You multiply by a reciprocal. So anyway, that's what I would do from now on, right? So okay, now then we go 15/16, and we're done. A lot less work. Agreed? Okay. What about this? What happens when you get one like this, though? 6m equals 5/8, lined on the equal sign. Here's the deal. We have a fraction over here, right? So this is what you would do. This is you can do this if you want to. You go, okay, I'm going to divide this by 6 and divide this by 6. Am I actually going to divide these guys by 6? No, I'm not really going to divide, right? So then, instead of me going divide by 6, what could I do instead of divide by 6? What am I actually going to do? Multiply by 1/6, right? I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal. Multiply by 1/6. Multiply by 1/6. This is actually 6/1. Do you agree that that's 6 here? This 6 here is actually 6/1?
Yeah.
So then that's why we get to just cross that out, leaving me with just m over, 5/48. Does that make sense? It's just so much quicker to do it that way, to know that you don't need to divide those things because you're never going to divide them. You're only going to multiply by the reciprocal anyway. So here, I'm going to give you 2 quick questions, and I'll give you 3. So we'll go 2y equals 1/3. That'll be 1. And then number 2 will be 8/9 equals negative 6x. Does it bother you that the variable is on the right-hand side over here? It should not. It should not bother you. All right. We'll just do those 2 for now. That's good for right now. So here we go. First thing we do is look down here. Line on the equal sign. Is the variable happy? No. He's being multiplied by 2. But I notice there's a fraction over here. So am I actually going to divide this by 2 and divide this by 2? Is that how I'm going to do this? No. What am I going to do? I'm going to multiply by reciprocal, which is 1/2. Multiply 1/3 by 1/2. These are gone. That y equals 1/6. How many of you got that? Y equals 1/6 for number 1. You didn't get that? What did you get?
I wrote it out wrong.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Number 2. Number 2 here is, that was not what I wanted. Number 2 here is this. So we're going to go, okay, is the line on the equal sign, is the variable happy? No. He's being multiplied by negative 6. What's the opposite? What is the reciprocal? Sorry, what is the, how do I get rid of that? How do I get rid of that multiply by negative 6? You do divide by negative 6, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to skip that, and we're going to multiply by negative 1/6. Here's the thing. If we don't multiply by negative 1/6, then in the end, what am I going to have over here? If I just multiply, I'm going to end up with a negative x, and that's no good, right? He's not happy if he's negative. So you got to multiply him by a negative 1/6, right? And multiply this by a negative 1/6, right? And so then they're gone, leaving me with x equals. Now, it's going to end up being negative 8/54. Is that what we want to put down? No. We should have done the cross cancel earlier, right? Multiply, divide by 2, divide by 2. That's a 3. This is a 4. This is a mess, is what it is. Ends up being negative 4/27. Now, here's the thing. This is important. You can leave this in your work like this. When you write it in your answer column, the answer to any equation is variable equals number. Okay, does that make sense? The way you answer a problem, an equation, is it goes variable equals number. You don't put 5 equals x, because that's not true. I mean, that's not really, it's x equals 5. You got to put down what you're looking for. We know what 5's worth, right? But we may not know what x is worth, so that's why you go x equals 5. Oh, I got it. Does that make sense? So anyway, you would write down this is fine in your work, in your answer column, you would put x equals negative 4/27. Now, what's the difference between that and negative 4/27 or 4 over negative 27? What's the difference between that, and that? Nothing, right? Which one's the correct one? Which one's the correct one? The one, it's this right here, x equals negative 4/27. So you put the negative out in front of the whole thing. Otherwise, you still have a problem, right? I mean, like, this is still technically a problem. It's negative 4 divided by 27. And wait a second, what is negative 4 divided by 27? It's actually negative 4/27. Does that make sense? Okay. Anyway, did anybody get that one? Anybody get that one? Did you drop the negative?
I have a negative, but I got negative 4/9.
Okay. Let's try another one. Let's do 9/13 equals negative 6/11 m. Okay, you guys try that one again. Give yourself plenty of room, and don't drop things. Just do them correctly. Don't forget about the negatives. So here's the deal, for real. Let's go through this. Whenever you do these, especially this, like, you're not going to do this on your head, so you've got to know how to set this up. You really do. You got to know how to set this up. Line down the equal sign. Variable's not happy, being multiplied by negative 6/11.
Yep.
Since there's if this was a whole number over here, you do whatever you want. Not really. If there was two whole numbers, then we would divide, right? But we have fractions here, so we never are going to divide by fractions, because how do you divide by fractions again?
You don't.
You don't. You multiply by the reciprocal. So let's just do that right now. What is the reciprocal of negative 6/11? Negative 11/6. It's just flip it over. So we're going to multiply by negative 11/6. Why am I multiplying it by a negative? Because in the end, what's a negative times a negative?
Positive.
A positive. That's what we want, right? We want a positive m. If I was to just go multiply by 11/6, then yes, the numbers are gone, but that still leaves me with a negative m. Is that what I want? Is that what I'm after? No. So I want to multiply this by a negative 11/6. Gone, 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 gone. That leaves me with just an 11. I multiply this side by negative 11/6. I could just go 99, whatever. Is that what I want? No. Let's reduce this. Let's go divide, not divide there. Divide by 3, divide by 3. Hold on a second. Multiply by this, so we got this. Okay, that makes this a 3. This is a 2. Negative, so it goes 11 times 3 is 33 over 26. Ooh, is there something else to reduce?
Yeah.
What else could I reduce?
No. You change it into a mixed. You change it into a mixed number. Yeah.
Okay. Here's the deal. I'll tell you this right now. So it's negative 3326, right? Negative 3326. You're in pre-algebra now. I'll tell you, as long as you're reduced, you do have to reduce that. If you could reduce that more, you need to reduce it. But once you now you're in pre-algebra, unless it tells you, it just says to solve, guess what? I'm done. M equals negative 3326. You don't need to pull that into a mixed number anymore. If they tell you to, you have to. For the most part, now that you're in algebra, you leave it. You leave it. There's many times that you're going to leave things. You wouldn't change that to a mixed number even if you wanted to, because it's just, you're dealing with like slope, and we'll talk about that later, but I would say that you're done. If you did switch it to negative 1 and 7/26, then you're fine. But you didn't need to. You got that?
Yeah, I got negative 1, 7/26, but I did like everything different.
How so?
Let's see, okay. Instead, I swapped 9 and 13.
How did you do that?
I made the reciprocal.
You multiply both sides by that. So you multiplied,
No,
so
instead of making it 11 over 6, I made it 13 over 9.
Okay.
And so, does that make any difference? Changing that one.
Because it's on the left.
So hold on. So what was the question again? The question was 9/13 equals negative 6/11 m. Okay. And so then what you did was you multiplied both sides by 13/9.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Listen, here's the rule about equations. First of all, that is not the proper procedure. It just isn't. You're trying to get the variable alone. He's not happy. Why isn't he happy? Because he's being multiplied by negative 6/11. Relax. He's being multiplied. So you deal with this number here. Okay. Now, what's the rule about equations though? What are you allowed to do to an equation? What are you allowed to do?
Swap it.
What am I allowed to do? I can do anything I want to. As long as what?
Let's see, it's the same.
Nope. What am I allowed to do? If I have an equation,
It's the same thing.
so I could multiply this side by 1,000,000,000,000. Totally acceptable. As long as I multiply this side by 1,000,000,000,000. Does that make sense? So when you say you multiply both sides by 13/9, as long as you multiply this side by 13/9, guess what? You're cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've made this problem a lot longer. You know what I'm saying? But you can do that. This makes this side what?
0.
No.
1.
1.
Sorry.
And then all of a sudden now, you see what I'm saying here? I mean, you've turned this into a kind of a mess. You've made it longer, but you're allowed to do that. So you could get there. That is not how I would do it. Make sense? Okay. Your homework.
So there's no mini class?
No. Your homework today is 11. This is Wednesday. Okay, this is page 270. 1 through, is it 48? Is that what I put down? That's a lot. 1 through, yeah, I'll give it to you. What am I talking about? 1 through 48 even.